The horse had lifted its head. Shasta stroked its smooth as satin nose and said, "I wish you could talk, old fellow." And then, for a second, he thought he was dreaming, for quite distinctly, though in a low voice, the horse said, "But I can." Shasta stared into its great eyes, and his own grew almost as big with astonishment. "How ever did you learn to talk?" he asked. "Hush, not so loud," replied the horse. "Where I come from, nearly all the animals talk." "Wherever is that?" asked Shasta. "Narnia," answered the horse. "The happy land of Narnia. Narnia of the heathery mountains and the thymy downs. Narnia of the many rivers, the plashing glens, the mossy caverns, and the deep forests ringing with the hammers of the dwarfs. Oh, the sweet air of Narnia! An hour's life there is better than 1,000 years in Kalaman." It ended with a whinny that sounded very like a sigh. "How did you get here?" said Shasta. "Kidnapped," said the horse. "Or stolen, or captured, whichever you'd like to call it. I was only a foal at the time. My mother warned me not to range the southern slopes into Archland and beyond, but I wouldn't heed her, and by the lion's mane I have paid for my folly. All these years I have been a slave to humans, hiding my true nature and pretending to be a dumb and witless like their horses." "Why didn't you just tell me who you were?" "Not such a fool, that's why. If they'd once found out I could talk, they would have made a show of me at fairs and guarded me more carefully than ever. My last chance of escape would have been gone." "And why—" began Shasta, but the horse interrupted him. "Now look," it said, "we mustn't waste time on idle questions. You want to know about my master, the Khan Arandon. Well, he's bad. Not too bad for me, for a war horse costs too much to be treated very badly. But you'd better be lying dead tonight than go to be a human slave in his house tomorrow." "Then I'd better run away," said Shasta, turning very pale. "Yes, you had," said the horse. "But why not run away with me?" "Are you going to run away too?" said Shasta. "Yes, if you'll come with me," answered the horse. "This is the chance for both of us. You see, if I run away without a rider, everyone who sees me will say, 'Stray horse,' and be after me as quick as he can. With a rider, I've a chance to get through. That's where you can help me. On the other hand, you can't go very far on those 2 silly legs of yours. What absurd legs humans have, without being overtaken. But on me you can outdistance any other horse in this country. That's where I can help you. By the way, I suppose you know how to ride?" "Oh, yes, of course," said Shasta. "At least I've ridden the donkey." "Ridden the what?" retorted the horse with extreme contempt. At least, that is what he meant. Actually, it came out as a sort of neigh. "Ridden the what?" Talking horses always become more horsey and accent when they are angry. "In other words," it continued, "you can't ride. That's a drawback. I'll have to teach you as we go along. If you can't ride, can you fall?" "I suppose anyone can fall," said Shasta. "I mean, can you fall and get up again without crying, and mount again and fall again, and yet not be afraid of falling?" "I'll try," said Shasta. "Poor little beast," said the horse in a gentler tone. "I forget you're only a foal. We'll make a fine rider of you in time. And now, we mustn't start until these 2 in the hut are asleep. Meantime, we can make our plans. My Tarkhan is on his way north to the great city, to Tashbaan itself and the court of the Tisroc." "I say," put in Shasta in rather a shocked voice, "oughtn't you sort of say, 'May he live forever'?" "Why?" asked the horse. "I'm a free Narnian, and why should I talk slaves and fools' talks? I don't want him to live forever, and I know that he's not going to live forever whether I want him to or not. And I can see you're from the free north too. No more of the southern jargon between you and me. And now, back to our plans. As I said, my human was on his way north to Tashbaan." "Does that mean we'd better go to the south?" "I think not," said the horse. "You see, he thinks I'm dumb and witless like his other horses. Now, if I really were, the moment I got loose, I'd go back home to my stable and paddock, back to his palace, which is 2 days' journey south. That's where he'll look for me. He'd never dream of my going on north on my own. And anyway, he will probably think that someone in the last village who saw him ride through has followed us to here and stolen me." "Oh, hooray!" said Shasta. "Then we'll go north. I've been longing to go to the north all my life." "Of course you have," said the horse. "That's because of the blood that's in you. I'm sure you're true northern stock, but not too loud. I should think they'd better be asleep soon now." "I'd better creep back and see," suggested Shasta. "That's a good idea," said the horse, "but take care you're not caught." It was a good deal darker now, and very silent except for the sound of the waves on the beach, which Shasta hardly noticed because he'd been hearing it day and night as long as he could remember. The cottage, as he approached it, showed no light. When he listened at the front, there was no noise. When he went round to the only window, he could hear, after a second or two, the familiar noise of the old fisherman's squeaky snore. It was funny to think that if all went well, he would never hear it again. Holding his breath and feeling a little bit sorry, but much less sorry than he was glad, Shasta glided away over the grass and went to the donkey's stable, groped along to a place he knew where the key was hidden, opened the door, and found the horse's saddle and bridle, which had been locked up there for the night. He bent forward and kissed the donkey's nose. "I'm sorry I can't take you," he said. "There you are at last," said the horse when he got back. "I was beginning to wonder what had become of you." "I was getting your things out of the stable," replied Shasta. "And now, can you tell me how to put them on?" For the next few minutes, Shasta was at work, very cautiously to avoid jingling, while the horse said things like, "Get that girth a bit tighter," or "You'll find a buckle lower down," or "You'll need to shorten those stirrups a good bit." When all was finished, it said, "Now we've got to have reins for the look of the thing, but you won't be using them. Tie them to the saddle bow, very slack, so that I can do what I want with my head. And remember, you are not to touch them." "What are they for, then?" asked Shasta. "Ordinarily they are for directing me," replied the horse, "but as I intend to do all the directing on this journey, you'd please keep your hands to yourself. And that's another thing, I'm not going to have you grabbing my mane." "But I say," pleaded Shasta, "if I'm not to hold on by the reins or by your mane, what am I to hold on by?" "You hold on with your knees," said the horse. "That's the secret of good riding. Grip my body between your knees as hard as you like, sit straight as a poker, keep your elbows in, and by the way, what did you do with the spurs?" "Put them on my feet, of course," said Shasta. "I do know that much." "Then you can take them off and put them in the saddlebag. We may be able to sell them when we get to Tashbaan. Ready? And now I think you can get up." "Oh, you're a dreadful height," gasped Shasta after his first and unsuccessful attempt. "I'm a horse, that's all," was the reply. "Anyone would think I was a haystack from the way you're trying to climb me. There, that's better. Now sit up and remember what I told you about your knees. Funny to think of me, who has led cavalry charges and won races, having a potato sack like you in the saddle. However, off we go." It chuckled, not unkindly. And it certainly began their night journey with great caution. First of all, it went just south of the fisherman's cottage to a little river, which there ran into the sea, and took care to leave in the mud some very plain hoof marks pointing south. But as soon as they were in the middle of the ford, it turned upstream and waited until they were about 100 yards further inland than the cottage. Then it selected a nice gravelly bit of bank which would take no footprints, and came out on the northern side. Then, still at a walking pace, it went northward till the cottage, the one tree, the donkey's stable, and the creek, everything, in fact, that Shasta had ever known, had sunk out of sight in the grey summer night darkness. They had been going uphill, and now were at the top of the ridge which had always been the boundary of Shasta's known world. He could not see what was ahead, except that it was open and grassy. It looked endless, wild and lonely and free. "I say," observed the horse, "what a place for a gallop, eh?" "Oh, don't let's," said Shasta. Not yet. I don't know how to... Please, horse, I don't know your name. Said the horse. I'll never be able to say that, said Shasta. Can I call you Bree? Well, if that's the best you can do, I suppose you must, said the horse. And what shall I call you? I'm called Shasta. Cool, said Bree. Well, now that's a name that's really hard to pronounce. But now about this gallop. It's a good deal easier than trotting if you only knew, because you don't have to rise and fall. Grip with your knees and keep your eyes straight ahead between my ears. Don't look at the ground. If you think you're going to fall, just grip harder and sit up straighter. Ready? Now, for Narnia and the North. So the only two questions that I'm going to ask is, question 1, was Ashish the fisherman a good father? And I want you to use examples from the reading to back up your opinion. And question 2, how do you think Shasta felt leaving his home? Again, use examples from the reading to back up your opinion.